Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki. Hare Krishna, welcome to our Srimad Bhagavatam class. We continue from the 4th canto, chapter 7, entitled The Sacrifice Performed by Daksha, text number 15. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the word by word. Yosau Maya Vidita Tatvatrisha Sabhayam Kshipto Durukti Vishikair Viganaya Tan Mam Arvak Patantam Arhatama Nindayapat Drishyartraya Sa Bhagavan Svakritena Tushet Yusau Maya Vidita Tatvatrisha Sabhayam Yusau Maya Vidita Tatvatrisha Sabhayam Kshipto Durukti Vishikai Viganaya Tanman Kshipto Durukti Vishikai Viganaya Tanmam Arvak Patantam Arhatam Manindayapad Patantam Arvak Patantam Arhatam Manindayapad Drishyartraya sa Bhagavan Svakritena Tushed. Drishyartraya sa Bhagavan Svakritena Tushed. Saumaya Vidita Tatvatrisha Sabhayam Kshipto Durukti Vishikari Viganaya Tanmam Arvak Patantam Arhatam Nindayapad Drishyartraya sa Bhagavan Svakritena Tushed. Yes, these verses are at times a bit challenging. Someone else wants to try? Yusau maya vidita tattva drisha sabhayam Kshipto durukti vishikai viganaya tanmam Arvakpatantam arhatamanindayapad Trishyartraya sa bhagavan svakritena tushid. Vaishnavis, try. Yosau maya vidita tattva trisha sabhayam Kshipto durukti vishikai viganaya tanmam Arvakpatantam arhatamanindayapad Trishyartraya sa bhagavan svakritena tushyed Yaha who asau that maya by me avidita tattva without knowing the actual fact Drisha by experience Sabhayam in the assembly Kshiptaha was abused Durukti unkind words Vishikai by the arrows of Viganaya taking no notice of Tat that Mam me Arvak downwards Patantam gliding down to hell Arhatama the most respectable Nindaya by defamation Apat saved Drishya seeing Artraya out of compassion Saha that Bhagavan your lordship Svakritena by your own mercy Tushed be satisfied. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I did not know your full glories. For this reason I threw arrows of sharp words at you in the open assembly, although you did not take them into account. I was going down to hell because of my disobedience to you, who are the most respectable personality. But you took compassion upon me and saved me by awarding punishment. I request that you be pleased by your own mercy, since I cannot satisfy you by my words. Purport. As usual, a devotee in an adverse condition of life accepts such a condition to be the mercy of the Lord. Factually, the insulting words used by Daksha against Lord Shiva were enough to have him thrown perpetually into a hellish life. But Lord Shiva, being kind toward him, awarded him punishment to neutralize the offense. King Daksha realized this and, feeling obliged for Lord Shiva's magnanimous behavior, wanted to show his gratitude. Sometimes a father punishes his child, and when the child is grown up and comes to his senses, he understands that the father's punishment was not actually punishment but mercy. Similarly, Daksha appreciated that the punishment offered to him by Lord Shiva was a manifestation of Lord Shiva's mercy. That is the symptom of a person making progress on the path of Krishna consciousness. It is said that a devotee in Krishna consciousness never takes any miserable condition of life to be condemnation by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He accepts the miserable condition to be the grace of the Lord. He thinks, I would have been punished or put into a more dangerous condition of life due to my past misdeeds, but the Lord has protected me. Thus I have received only a little punishment as token execution of the law of karma. Thinking of His grace in that way, a devotee always surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead more and more seriously and is not disturbed by such so-called punishment. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swabrantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vagisha Yasya Vadane Lakshmir Yasya Chavakshasi Yasya Dheridaye Samvit Tam Narasimham Aham Bhaje Paralada Ridayaladam Bhakta Vityavidaram Sharatindurjim Vande Parindra Vandanam Harim. The verse again. I did not know your full glories. For this reason, I threw arrows of sharp birds at you in the open assembly, although you did not take them into account. I was going down to hell because of my disobedience to you, who are the most respectable personality. But you took compassion upon me and saved me by awarding punishment. I request that you be pleased by your own mercy, since I cannot satisfy you by my words. I felt there are so many very interesting and extremely valuable and relevant points in this verse and purport. I hope I can cover a few in this class. Also, Srila Prabhupada's purport, it's very insightful. If you look closer, he explains a lot the psychology of a devotee and how he digests, so to speak, life events that are not easy to digest, based on certain insight, certain consciousness. Ultimately, it culminates into faith. Srila Prabhupada is pointing out in this purport how it is a sign of advancement if you truly can take whatever comes your way as the mercy of the Lord. And that's a symptom of Shraddha, that I trust enough into the Lord, into His wisdom, justice, fairness, that I can receive it as fair. But often this is difficult. So there are three things I would like to cover in the class, and of course I would like to give space also to some discussion, because I assume there will be some discussion developing from that. The verse and purport include topics like compassion and punishment in the first place. I would like to enter this topic, because they can be looked at quite contrary, compassion versus punishment. Then there's also the topic of innocence and guilt. This is also connected with punishment. And also the topic of justice and injustice. These things, I think, are all linked to one another, and I would like to address them. Daksha is saying to Shiva here, you took compassion upon me and saved me by awarding punishment. So this sentence struck with me to say that he says, you showed compassion by punishing me. Often we would rather understand compassion as someone is, how to say, not taking to punishment, but rather forgives me. So that's compassionate sometimes. Please be compassionate, forgive my offense. And we would not necessarily look at, or most people in general, maybe also devotees, depending on what stage they are, would not necessarily look on punishment as a form of compassion. And Srila Prabhupada uses the example of a father here in this purport, who punishes with the aim to ultimately benefit the child. And if the child is wise enough by growing up, may understand that it is, or has been, rather a compassion. But it's still a tricky thing, because first of all, usually we have, you can look in your own life how much it is true for you, a concept of innocence. We live in a consciousness of I'm innocent. What did I do to deserve this and that? And usually from a strong mentality of innocence or consciousness of innocence also quickly develops a consciousness of victimhood. So because if I'm innocent and something bad happens to me, then I am the victim. It's not necessary that I immediately get into a victim mentality, but simply that I feel, well, it's not fair, I'm innocent, how do I deserve this or that? So I think this is strongly there. As devotees, we might have learned already to look at life events differently since we started practicing Krishna consciousness. But perhaps if we look backward a bit, I, for example, also know like how to understand my birth, my family context. So many things I experienced as unfair and unjust, and thinking, but I was innocent. Why did I receive all that happened? So these things might be difficult to digest. And one reason is that there's a strong concept of innocence within that. Also, I was for some while in a Christian community, and there is a different concept also of God and how we relate to them. There's a certain partiality, duality within God and His people, so to speak. On one side, there are the righteous people, the good people, and usually if you accept the Christian faith or whatever faith it might be, you count to the righteous people. And since you're righteous, means you follow the laws of God, the Ten Commandments, you also become somewhat innocent. You're on the good side. So if something happens to you, someone treats you bad, it's his or her wrong, not yours. And God is supposed to punish the bad person because you're the good person. So, and the concept is, if God loves me, He must be on my side. That would be the idea. And also, that's what I got, like when I read the Bible, when I was also in the church I was. And the consequence from that is, then He will rule in my favor. So if He loves me, He's on my side, then He rules in my favor. And if He's compassionate, then He will show, or should, forgive me. And if He punishes me, He doesn't love me. So that might be a mentality that is present. And we might look at ourselves and see, maybe to some degree, more or less, we might have that consciousness. And that makes it difficult to accept unfairness or like things that happen in our life that are difficult. Also, so many devotees in this movement, they experience so much hurt and pain, although they dedicated their whole life to the mission of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. And so many things happened, and they feel still hurt. They're still aching inside, because of so many conceptions of like, how can it happen? Why did I get treated like this? They cannot come from a place where Daksha is coming, who says, actually, this is Krishna's mercy, is compassion in form of punishment. So I was contemplating that the more I think actually that I'm righteous, the more I'm actually vulnerable to a sense of injustice. The more I'm convinced I'm a good one, there's no fault on my side, I'm innocent, I'm righteous, the more like I can be triggered by the sense of injustice. But here, when like in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, the Vaishnava actually doesn't look at himself as innocent in that sense. The Vaishnava looks at himself as a person who has certainly created a whole lot of karmic reactions that are still to be transformed or to be digested. And he looks at it as, actually I was supposed to get much more. I just get, by the mercy of Krishna, a little bit. And sometimes, like in Daksha's case, he just got his head cut off and got a goat head, for example. Or we might experience other drastic, we don't talk just about someone insults me or doesn't look at me when we pass by. We talk about serious, harm that might come our way. And we see that because we also have the concept of, in Krishna consciousness, that Krishna protects his devotees. Vishnu is on the side of the demigods, not on the side of the demons. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam. And a devotee might, or like someone in practice of Krishna consciousness, might think of, but I belong to the Paritranaya sadhunam part, not vinashana cha duskritam. I'm not a duskritina. So the duskritinas, they get punished, the demons, or the miscreants, the lowest of mankind, and the sadhus, they become protected. They get protection from Krishna. Although, interestingly, they suffer under the duskritinas. When you hear sometimes, you see, read the Bhagavatam, the Ramayana or Mahabharata, you see that some Brahmins and sages, they get severely abused by demonic creatures. Not just that they urinate and pass stool on their sacred grounds for sacrifice. Their wives get raped, they get even killed. So stuff like that happens to them, you know. And in Kali Yuga it is said that the divine and demoniac qualities reside even within the same body. So we are at the same time, we might be to some degree sadhu, but also Duskritina is there at the same time. Whereas in other yugas they reside in different bodies, then on different planets even, but in Kali Yuga they're intertwined. So we have both tendencies. So therefore, actually we also are being deserving of punishment based on that we act sinful. So we will come to this concept a bit later also, more in detail. So I was wondering, like, yeah, what does it take? Here Daksha came to the point of recognizing how Shiva actually is expressing compassion, and we discussed it also some while ago when the verses were about the anger that Lord Shiva was expressing, and we talked about it. This anger of Lord Shiva is not coming from lust, not from false ego, but rather from a sense of protecting Dharma, that it was a necessity to create balance. He was not agitated, he appeared agitated, but actually he felt, I need to act not for my sake, but actually for the sake of those involved, and in general to set a standard, you know, like a king has to. He cannot just stand by and look when crimes happen in his kingdom. He has to punish. But not because he's angry himself or false ego, but out of principle, so to speak, out of Dharma. So in order to recognize punishment as compassion, one must have realized the benefits and also the rightfulness of the punishment or penalty. Unless I don't see what is the benefit of becoming punished or the rightful reason that it happens, I cannot accept. So it requires some qualities like objectivity, self-awareness, honesty and sincerity. The more I cultivate those qualities, the more I get a sense, the more I can realize or like be open to understand that this what happens to me is for a good reason, it is justified. You know, because in the word justified, justice is within, is already in there. It has a valid reason so that it happens. And we sometimes might just look at, we tend to omit the faults on our part and tend to see only the fault of the other side. And in this way we are not very objective, we are often very subjective. And we can also call it biased. I rule in my favor. when it's about something that happened, was bad. So it's not very sincere at the same time, and it requires that I'm self-aware. How do I affect the situation by my behavior, by my qualities, by my character, by the things I do, but also by the things that I don't do. So we always affect our environment, and we always participate even if we are passive. That's also a form of participation. We cannot not participate in any given event, so to speak. But passivity is participation in the mode of ignorance or tamas. It's inactive. So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that the punishment was meant to neutralize the offense. You know, of Shiva neutralized the offense of Daksha by punishing him already. Otherwise, he might have gone to hell. It's also an interesting concept. If Lord Shiva would not have acted that way, Daksha would have suffered much more. So it might be an interesting question to look at, but how come that the act of Lord Shiva, what empowered this act so much that it reduced the sentence, so to speak? So it's a question I have. I don't have an answer. I just wonder about that. So with karma, it's always about creating balance. Because at first there was an action, then a reaction. And also, it is about, if Daksha wouldn't have been punished, what would have been likely a result of that if he would have gotten away with it? What do you think? what consequences can you think of, or results can you think of, if he would not have been punished by Shiva like that, but could have gone on with it?
There is a good chance that he would create more offenses.
Right, exactly. Microphone.
The whole kingdom would go down with all brahmanas and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because they also was included, these brahmanas, and they had to accept what he's doing out of fear.
Yeah, because they supported Daksha out of fear, so they were also actually on the wrongdoers' side, and they would have practically destroyed the whole kingdom with that. Yes, thanks. Yeah, the essential thing is he could have gone on, or he could have continued to act in a wrong way, and perhaps even cause greater harm. Because if a person is confirmed in his or her wrongdoings by either passivity or by approval, then this person continues to do bad, and even we have tendency to increase whatever we do. At some point he might have done something even worse than that. So this is also something one needs to take into perspective. What would be a future outcome if there's no consequence? And sometimes also with devotees, we have that, like we have this value of forgiveness and compassion, and there's a lot of maybe insecurity and also irritation about the aspect of correction and even punishment, who is supposed to and how and what. So we tend to go on the other side, and at the same time what happens, many, even amongst devotees continue to behave in a way that is actually not good. And well, the question might be, who carries all the reactions for that, besides the person who does the wrongdoing? So it's just some food for thought. Yes, so Daksha came to the point to trust enough in Shiva, is again addressed here as Bhagavan because he's very close to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his fairness and wisdom and justice. So he had not anymore the conflict of being innocent, rather he admitted guilt. So it's another part, innocence versus guilt. Innocence means I assume I'm not at fault, or I don't carry responsibility. And we said that the belief of innocence leads often to victimhood, and then we resist or we become defensive when we are supposed to receive the results or some punishment, karmic reactions. Because our belief objects. That's not fair. I don't deserve this. But in a higher sense, we would say the reason that it happens already means it is justified, providing that we trust that Krishna arranges everything perfectly. Otherwise, we will say Krishna is imperfect. We say his arrangement is not correct. And many people have that attitude. God is making mistakes a lot, particularly with me, by not making my life the way I want it, or should I think I'm supposed to have it. In that sense, a very self-centered approach where I think my understanding that my consciousness, my grasp of universal laws is superior to anyone else's. Because I think I can assert what's truly right and wrong. And that's a problem we have. We completely overestimate our capacity to understand, to know, to be aware, and to enter the cosmic dynamics of laws like karma. Once we had also discussions, was back then also on Facebook forum, there was one atheist versus theist kind of discussions. And also one of the arguments that were brought up against the law of karma is, how can I accept some responsibility for something I can't remember? Right? Like with a child, when you punish a child for something and the child has no clue what it is for, it simply gets irritated and then becomes disturbed mentally. which makes sense, because you have to get a sense for what get I punished, that I can even accommodate it and make a connection between punishment and misdeed. So if I don't have the knowledge of what I did wrong, how can I accept the punishment for it? And Srila Prabhupada once argues, in the video footage that is available, there's one of the conversations, he sits in a park and he addresses that, and he says, actually memory is not an argument. He says, if you're a father, you have a child, and you witness all the things the child is doing, the child is forgetting, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen. The father remembers. As children, we don't remember so many things. It's not a proof that it didn't happen. That's one of the defects of a conditioned soul. We are forgetful. We are influenced by tamagun. So if we would take that as an argument, literally, forgetfulness, or like that I can't recall it, is kind of a proof it is not happening, or that many things don't happen, although they happen, obviously. So, of course, it's on a lifetime scale, it's a bit different. But here we don't have the pratyaksha, means the direct experience, but we have anumana logic. We can understand our philosophies explaining how we build up a new body based on past activities, on how the cause is present in the effect. Means the cause is our previous life, our activities, our consciousness, our mentality, and we carry it on to the next, to new birth, and it reflects there. And like this, from the Talmud, this Jewish wisdom says, beware of your thoughts because they become your words, and be aware of your words, they become your deeds. Be aware of your deeds because they become habits, and they become your character, and then from there this becomes your destiny. So we can always also, if it's a calculation, you can also, like in math, you can go backwards. And you can check on what is your state of mind, what is your mentality, and connect it to also events you cause right now. So it's a bit more complex. But then we have, it comes again to the self-awareness, to the honesty, and to the openness to look at how things are connected in my life. The way I behave, the way I think and do and respond to circumstances, the way how I treat others and myself, and how there might be a correlation, strong correlation to what comes back to me. Let's say some people suffer from, I'm so isolated, no one is really deeply connecting with me, it's unfair, people are impersonal. And then the person might look at him or herself and ultimately realize, but I'm a person, I don't open up at all. Even if people come. So there we see, I cause, actually by my own way of being, a reaction in others that mirrors actually my own mentality. Lack of connection, lack of closeness. This might be one example, and you might find so many examples in your life how there are things where we don't see the connection. We first have to make it. We have to become aware of ourselves first and how we do things. And then we can also understand how we cause so many things with other people and our lives, in ourselves. So self-awareness, sensitivity, intelligence, this is important. So we got to invest in those qualities if we want to be stronger also in our faith. Strong in our faith that karma actually is fair. Otherwise we have so many struggles with that. Why did I get this kinds of parents? What did I do to deserve that? And so on. Yeah, and often when you read literature also about reincarnation, like Ronald Sura has, like the Swiss devotee Raja Vidya, yes, he did it very well. I find this book Reincarnation. He had they did also this reincarnation therapy where people were brought back to the past because everything is, stored and saved in the subtle body. All the information that we actually need is there, but we have hard time to access it. And there was one woman who repeatedly got, I don't remember exactly, but there were a few times she got, I think, severely abused or something. And then she went back, and there was, I think it was a lot about children she had in a past life that she mistreated a lot. But anyway, there's some details, I don't remember it clearly, but the principle is you change sides. When you be on the culprit side, you're the doer of offense, and then you change and you receive. You become the part of the victim, to receive that. It can be, of course the details can look different, but that's the principle. You actually, like the Bible says, reap what you sow. For example, the aggression of Daksha, it was in one sense active and one sense passive. And in itself it was a destructive force. Actively he insulted Lord Shiva. Insult is a form of aggression, a form of violence, because you consciously hurt someone. You use anger, you send some destructive energy out there. So, it's violence, right? And violence usually has the intention to destroy something. With Sati, it was more of a passive violence. He ignored her and hurt her by not taking his responsibility as a father to properly take care of her and give her shelter. So what happened to him, he got destroyed. Because Sati destroyed herself based on the passive aggression of Daksha. So here actually Daksha in the first place was the aggressive, destructive person. And at the end he received destruction. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi ki jai, Shishi Gauranitai ki jai. So his own destruction or destructiveness he sent out fell back on him. Here also, of course, in this verse it becomes clear, like it depends also whom you offend, then the reaction might be even stronger. So since Lord Shiva was a very elevated personality. And punishment serves to, usually it makes people sober. It sobers us up, like kind of shall awaken, us to the facts, to some realities we might ignore or not see. And one consideration that is also important in connection to karma, to understand it in order to make sense of it, is that we consider the range of impact an activity has. I heard this one image is given. If you throw a stone into a calm pond of water, so there's the entry point, and there's one wave, and then many rings develop from it. And I think this is a very good metaphor to understand how a karmic reaction is not just one stone, one ring. It's one stone, many rings. And one example might be given that, let's say one person kills another person. A man kills a man. So then you could say, yes, karma it means now this person changes roles and gets killed in the next life also. Maybe by the same soul in a different body. And that's it, then karma is being served. But that's not it. Because what also has to be considered, what impact does the death of this person have on his family? Let's say he was a married man. Might be, in one side it could be a wife and at least one child who depended on him. So, from their family, a man was taken away who could not provide and protect anymore. That's more severe, perhaps, than if he would be rather a useless guy who, would not support his family. Then the reaction would be different. But let's assume he was the maintainer, and then the family struggles a lot. Simply that fact. But then also there's a wife who lost her husband and might suffer severely emotionally. And maybe the children, based on this event, also get some way disturbed and go in a direction where they perform all kinds of criminal activities. So And there might be many other things we don't even think of now. So, but the person who kills the man gets partially reactions for all of that. Because his activity doesn't stop with the killing of one person. There's a range of impact coming from that killing. And there's also part we get. Like in a positive sense also. You know, if we empower someone to solve an issue and this person becomes, let's say, very successful in his life and affects so many people, like we say, if you create someone who to be a Vaishnava, if you support this person, train this person, support and help to grow, and this person goes out, preaches, and does so many things, to some degree you also get benefit, because it was also your part, the positive thing you created. So it also works in a negative like this. So then you might end up not just being killed once in a life, but you might have been in a family where your father gets killed. Simply because you have to receive the reactions from all the people you involved, the range of impact. Or maybe once you have to become a woman whose husband gets killed. So therefore, if you consider that, then karma, like, you know, became more accommodated. It makes sense. There's complexity to it. You know. So this is something that might be helpful to more connect to this whole principle of karma. And one thing I want to discuss for the end is something that intrigued me since longer time, is actually how is it measured, the punishment? What is the standard or principle from where you conclude, okay, for this offense, this type of punishment is proper? You know, what is the measurement and how is it based? And of course, we have to make a short journey into the law sciences. It comes to the topic of justice and injustice. And there are some principles of assessing a penalty. And the main aspect is what they try to figure out. Has the person done it? Here's the word culpably. That means, are you guilty? Is there guilt on your side that you did it? Now, that's one of the main. This is the main measurement. How guilty are you, so to speak, of the given crime or offense? Because we can do something accidentally, or like unwanted, or like there's some stuff like we call it you act in affect, means just by impulse, you don't really contemplate. There's a difference, for example, between murder and manslaughter. Murder is something you contemplate, you plan, you consciously do it. Manslaughter might be something you kill someone out of impulse, you know, like that. Of course, killing is killing, but still makes a difference in the punishment that you get. So, in our law also we have a few things that are considered. One is the motive. What is the reason that moved the person to do it? You know, and there are motives that might be, let's say, less bad, so to speak, and motives that are more bad because they're more maybe evil. There might be motives like I took pleasure in torturing someone, you know. Whereas on the other hand, this person robbed me or really harmed me bad, and I took revenge, you know. So the employed will or the disposition, attitude matters. How much did you invest, you know, to do what you did? Also, breach of duty, it's called. In German, you have Fahrlässigkeit. This relates to the should-haves, the violation of what you should have. Like Daksha was someone, he should have protected his daughter. And he failed to perform his duty. So he was also in that sense not just fahrlässig, we say vorsätzlich. That means he consciously violated some ethics he should not have. Then the way of how a crime is committed matters, and the consequences. You know, if you go with the killing, if you just quickly kill someone like that, or like if you gradually, in a painful, cruel way, make this person die, makes a difference in how you're punished. The previous life, have you done stuff like that before? Or like, is it the first time you do something? It's considered. Also interestingly, the behavior after the crime. Are you remorseful? Do you make attempts for amending it? Or you just don't give you don't care, cold-hearted. And then another interesting thing is the penalty sensitivity of the person. Some people might think, what? Why should we consider like how sensitive someone is to a punishment? It means how can the person take punishment, or how much is it rehabilitative? It's an interesting consideration. Right? So many things are there, and they look at in the future life. Let's say we punish that person. How will that punishment affect the person's future life? And let's say they have to go to prison. What will be the long-term outcome? So there are many things that are being considered in when it comes to punishment and offense, and also in the Vedic scriptures there's the Manu Sanghita, which actually is not for Kali Yuga. There are other scriptures, Dharma Shastras, that give information. And often we are more quick with coming from like what we feel is a proper punishment for something. But actually it's quite a complex thing, and also karma works complex. In my understanding, karma involves, or the Supersoul, Krishna, involves all these things. All these ideas of ethics and law and justice come from Krishna. So faith in Krishna means to think he considers all that. So whatever comes in our lives comes from the perfect judge, actually. So that would be the mentality a Vaishnava is supposed to have. And as Prabhupada says, that's a sign of advancement in spiritual life. Kanishta Adhikari, also Madhyam Uttama Adhikari, are for one reason, on one side, distinguished based on their level of faith. Faith in Shastra, but also faith in Krishna himself. How much do I trust Krishna that he makes the right decisions? How much do I trust him that I may surrender and give up being the controller, and even if something happens in my life that I cannot really accommodate or irritates me strongly, how much can I still rely on Krishna that he is good, so to speak, that he is fair, that he is loving? So those were some thoughts. And by the way, also in our society, punishment is actually the last resort. The really strong punishment, like sending you to prison, there are like other measures being taken. They sometimes distinguish just by terms, but they try to get you first with lesser things, and if you're really as bad as that you need it, you get severely punished. So it's not simply retaliation. Or you did something bad, now you get back. All right, let's open here for comments, questions. I think there's... maybe I go first because there's one online thing. I might then create a balance. So there's one question. How do we personally create a balance? Balance between accepting the hardships, punishment that come to us, and using Krishna's mercy, that is our intelligence, to not be cruel towards ourselves and eventually being frustrated. So how do we personally create a balance between accepting the hardships and punishments that come to us and using Krishna's mercy? That is our intelligence, to not be cruel toward ourselves and eventually being frustrated. So if you understand the question correctly, it is also about when we are in the role where we employ intelligence in order to, if you have to inflict even punishment on others. So I'm not fully sure if I get the question correct. Maybe someone wants to share what to understand.
Who is asking?
Devashri Radhika Mataji is asking.
I had a very similar question, so maybe. I mean, that's how I understand. I might be also wrong. That yes, we understand Krishna as a perfect judge, and he sanctions things to happen to us for some reasons. And then where is the boundary line where we also see that sometimes stuff happens to us, which is actually we have to stand up. Let's say we are being abused.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So one angle, one would say, well, Krishna sanctioned it, so so in this way.
I think I get the point. Like, acceptance might go in direction passivity. That when you say something is justified by Krishna, so I'm just let it happen to me and maybe to others. With the karma, one of the problems is that some people go in that what is called fatalistic. They say everything is predetermined, and what shall I do? I don't act anymore, or like, yes, accepting for me means, of course, that what comes is justified, but it might still challenge me or prompt me that I'm supposed to respond to it consciously. You know, accepting does not mean that I don't respond anymore consciously, because something might be unfair. Someone tries to cheat me, for example. So it doesn't mean they say, oh yeah, previous life, I cheated someone, so let this person cheat me. You know? No, it's about you understand, you don't get unnecessarily bitter or frustrated with the person, you understand, okay, here's something wrong, okay, let me take appropriate measures to avoid me being cheated, but maybe also bring this person to how you say that when you make an Anzeige in English, when you say that? You report that, for example. So at the same time that it happens to you, you accept. It's not like, how could this happen to me that someone tries to cheat me, you know? But more like being in the acceptance and at the same time acting based on some understanding of justice and law, you know, or like if you see let's say someone mistreats you. This we have sometimes, actually, since I work with people who are also being severely traumatized by physical or sexual abuse. They might develop the mentality, I deserve that. It's something out of some how to say, self-destructive way of looking at them, which might come from the perpetrators themselves, that they tell this to the victims. You are worthless and nothing, you deserve no better, and so on. So that is a difficulty, of course, because even you might be karmically deserving it, doesn't make it right. Sounds a bit contradictory. Now the thing is, karmically you deserve the crime, but the crime remains a crime. So even the person doing it, though it's karmically justified, still performs a crime he receives reaction to. It's not that this person who abuses another person, does not get reactions for it. Based on the idea, yeah, but that person's karma was to get abused. So we have an endless kind of, then we have a fallacy, logical fallacy. Because if that person before that abused someone, could also then say, but wait a second, the person I abused deserved it karmically, why should I get reaction? So we have an endless argument, so who is actually at fault? If, when you receive it, you deserve it, then the logic conclusion is not that the person who acts as a tool to give your karma does not get reactions. It also gets.
It's like a never-ending circle. Like if I do I deserve the karma. Mm-hmm. So someone does something bad to me, but then this person also accumulates karma, and then this is like a never-ending building up of karma, right? And the Christians had that idea, and I wonder if that is proven in scriptures, that someone comes and takes all that away. And you start like from a blank sheet. Is that something? I know I heard that a guru, for example, could take someone's karma. Is there some proof to that ideology that Jesus takes through his death, takes all the karmic reactions if you follow him?
As far as I understood it, because in our tradition, with the guru, takes some reactions, some of your karma away, so that you can really enter the practice of devotional service, because karma might prevent you, that your mind and body is able to access devotional service. So there is something like burning of karma, and it's even symbolized in the fire yagya by the banana. That's why you don't eat this banana. Because it's kind of a hard burnt banana. So it says there, it enters all. You know, we have this principle of Ekadashi is a bit similar. And it's what I heard, like that Jesus makes sense that his close followers, that he might have taken reactions from them, so to empower them. Pure devotee can do that. He has the capacity to absorb sinful reactions, means neutralize them. Like also Lord Shiva here, obviously, speaking, he neutralized, okay, he inflicted punishment, but also he reduced, obviously, the karmic reactions of Daksha by the punishment. That's a bit different. But yeah, actually what stops the karmic cycle are two things in my understanding. This is, on one side, the acceptance and also forgiveness. What makes a person retaliate or like go fight back is, it might be even the not understanding that it's karmically justified. The sense of injustice, or I'm innocent and therefore actually I have to get back, continues the duality between victim and perpetrator. And so we see in the saintly personalities, like also Haridas Thakur and many others, you know, they go through severe mistreatment. And at the same time, they find no fault in the people who mistreat them severely. It's a high platform. It really requires transcendental consciousness, because if you're in a mode of passion or goodness, a passion or ignorance, that becomes a very destructive thing. You know, that's not very sublime. If you maybe accept out of some tamasic guilt feeling all kinds of sufferings. Like Haridas Thakur was even ready when the punishers said, oh, wait, hey, you don't die. We already, I don't know how many marketplaces have been already. Many, was already 20. And on 21st probably they said, and then 23, however, like more than 20. So, and they were afraid because they said, we will be killed if you don't die. And his response is, oh yes, if my existence is an inconvenience to you, I will give up my body. You know, and he did. Of course, we also accepted it again, but on this position he could do it. So my understanding is with the question here, with the balance between accepting the hardships and punishments and then using also your intelligence to maybe defend yourselves properly, must be both there. We should not enter a mode of passivity, of fatalistic consciousness. Oh yeah, it's all my karma and I simply have to passively sit there and let everything happen. It's more like that it happens, you cannot avoid, to not resist it, and to not play a blame game, or like to rather come to a point and say, okay, out of some reason Krishna gave me that, I deserved it, but let me find ways to productively deal with it. And sometimes it might also be, if you get abused, of course you report this person. It's not because, at the same time, I understand the reason that it happens has to do with my karma. At the same time, there are laws. This thing itself, as I said before, the activity itself remains a crime. It doesn't become good simply because your karma allows it. You know?
But isn't it so that because karma is not absolute, right, because there's free will, that also there can be karma chains started, new karma chains? Let's say for sexual abuse, somebody gets sexually abused, and now it's not that person's karma that she gets abused, he gets abused, but because the other person, he just misuses free will to start a new chain. Mm-hmm. Like maybe this person didn't do anything wrong before, so to speak, and then still.
Yeah, it's an intriguing question.
Karma is so complicated, it's so complex. And
usually, we hear that karma has no beginning in a sense. it said, since the material world, because the question might be, what was in Christian you have the original sins in Christianity, that's from Adam and Eve, and we inherited it all. So their bad falls to us down, it's inherited. But there's not really a first sin. That's an interesting concept, because Jivas said are beginningless, the material world in itself is beginningless. And actually it is not, as far as I understand, not confirmed that everyone was first a Brahma when they came into the material world. And even if they would be, still the question would have been the activities that justify all kinds of existences with their sufferings. The new karma chain is of course always there, and we know it starts subtly. Deep within the mind, there's the bija, the seed forms that are not sprouted, and the kutastha, then when it becomes a sprout, and then the third level when it grows, and the fourth when you ripe the fruit, the prarabdha karma, that which cannot be changed. Karma and then receives it, and for another might attract something because it's subtly there already, not so full-fledged. But as you say, it's a complex thing, you know.
Say it's possible in this scenario that...
Yeah, I mean, possible, yeah, because once I think it's Shukadev Goswami or Narada Muni was saying it, that the material energy, like in its complexities and how it works, not even a pure devotee can fully understand it. So yeah, possibilities certainly would be there. My understanding would be always, I would assume there is some cause-effect principle. And yeah, when does exactly new chain of karma starts? Interesting question. Probably the rise of desire that leads also to sinful reaction or activity which leads to sinful reaction. That's true. Maybe Manu
can. All these measurements, you said how we can measure punishment. Where is this stated in the Shastra?
I mean, these are not Shastric statements. This is from like how our present society law, the standards they use. And there are certainly Dharma Shastras which must include that, but I wouldn't know what exact Shastras these are. I mean, the Manu Sanghita is certainly a law book that deals with things, but since it is not for Kali Yuga, there must be another scripture that is in a Vedic context valid, so to speak, for law. Would be an interesting research topic.
This you took from the social context today, how they measure punishment. Then the second question is about the Manu Samhita. Srila Prabhupada often cited the Manu Samhita, and when I was in South India, Mukunda Datta Prabhu said about the 10 offenses of the holy name when we not honor the Vedic scriptures. He also said Manu Samhita is also included, and I never heard this, that it's not valuable for Kali Yuga.
Not valuable, I said not valid. You can Google, you can also look at the Vani quotes. Srila Prabhupada in several points says that since the Kali Yuga population is on a very different standard. When Manu, Swayambhuva Manu, created the Manu Sanghita, it was for a society where, for example, there are clearly Varnashram Dharma structures. So it applies to a Varnashram Dharma structure. So, but if you don't have a Varnashram Dharma structure in Kali Yuga, that's symptomatic. So you cannot apply a law where the people it applies to are not fitting in the whole categories even. So then there's Narada Pancharatra as a substitute. And you can find that Srila Prabhupada many points, many quotes states that, of course he quotes Manu Sanghita and some principles might certainly be valid, but taking it one-to-one is not possible, since it would not be right to apply a law what is meant for people on such standard to people who are on such standard. You can find it in Prabhupada's books. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, one last thing. Let me finish. If there's anything.
I just wanted to add a thought that the principle for karma ultimately is to change the consciousness of a living entity. Otherwise, there's no really need for karma, isn't it? It's like it's a facility. Mm-hmm. It's a facility. So when you mentioned also for Lord Shiva, how he had such an amazing power to actually get rid of that some of the karma, meaning that he had a great power to transform the consciousness of Daksha to a very high level. And I guess the reference point is devotional service. As living entities more closer to devotional service, as the karma. Yeah, I just got lost in my own thoughts. Anyway, just thought to throw it in there. Mm-hmm. That the basic principle of karma is.
Yeah, it's about correction to awaken actually the jiva to its wrongdoings, and also we have in this society rehabilitation. You fall off the path, so to speak, the righteous path, and this whole punishment is actually, the idea is to bring you back, rehabilitate you to the righteous path. So that would mean if we fell off from God consciousness, from Krishna consciousness, and actually all this karma and stuff is there to ultimately, on a hard way, also bring us back to the proper path of obeying Krishna practically. Good, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.